And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei, Al Bob. I am on the deck, and I am here. I'm not going nowhere. Anyway, it's raining right now. It's been raining, sunny, raining, sunny, raining, sunny. I should have just stayed at the deep green. I went up the log road for about a football field's worth, and then I hit a rut that the cockroaches' motorbikes made, and then the rain made worse that I didn't notice, and it caused my car to slip backwards and into a ditch. And the seeming one driving wheel is not driving, or maybe something more mechanical has happened to it. I don't know. Anyway, that's the story on my Mogus, right? And pray for my car to be in good shape and get out of here relatively sooner than later. What else? But we look at the world around us, and I have been speaking on this since 2017, right? So that's so about 9 years, 7 years, so 17, 18, 19, 20, then add five, and so that's 6, 7, 8. So that's 8 years I've been talking about the big splat, you know, and that things were coming, right? And they weren't bad, good, or indifferent. It was just things were going to change, right? And the powers that shouldn't be are scared crapless, and what's happened in the what we did with 9/11 and Afghanistan and Iraq. We went into Iraq for weapons of mass destruction. We're none. Instead of just going in there and looking for those, we totally went for regime change, and we got what that the hand wanted. They wanted complete destruction of any kind of norms and having basically chaos, right? And that's where the Middle East is. And so it's very obvious. Donnie comes in for 2.0, gets sworn in. First place he goes internationally, he goes to the Mid East. He goes to Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, who gives him a $1 billion golden castle in the sky. And we have this thing called the Emoluments Clause that, the president and also other politicians aren't supposed to take basically bribes. And here it is. We're getting a bribe. And it's, America has been that way since the beginning, right? And so, but the end of what I love about Donald Trump is two things. He lies so much, he tells the truth, right? He tells everyone exactly what he's got from day one. I'm going to be whatever, king. Yeah, that's me. And they, you have to realize that Donnie is nothing but a game show host. I've been saying this, and I would love to have some live chat back on this and what you think is going on, right? So here's, I look at lots of stuff, and I don't do it regularly because I don't have the internet, don't have TV, don't have satellite, don't have nothing, right? Radio, a little bit of, right?
Into several days of Operation True Promise 3, and it has absolutely shaken Israel and the United States. This is an incredible scene to see Tel Aviv, Haifa, central occupied Palestine, or Israel, as it's called, burning, to see buildings demolished, to see military installations taken down, to hear that F-35s, 3 now, according to Iran, have been downed. Iran has been using decoys, has been fooling Israeli drones and Israeli fighter jets as they attempt to supposedly take out the quote-unquote nuclear facilities. But those facilities remain intact. Fordo, Isfahan, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Natanz, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly either. But they're all still up and standing. They have not been taken out. Iran's terrain is posing huge problems, but so too is Iran's military capabilities. This is absolutely stunning in the sense that it has pierced Israel's exceptionalism, this idea of Israeli superiority Israel went into this desperate. I don't think many people understand that when Israel conducted this strike, this was not the timing that I believe the United States wanted. So Israel, Netanyahu, came into this thinking that if it could shock, if it could surprise, if it could conduct what some say was a cyber attack that led to the ultimate initial strike against Iran, those over 200 fighter jets that came in, conducted many decapitation strikes, landed a blow on Iran. But now that element of surprise is completely over. It's gone. It's not happening again, or at least if the United States enters, we will see much more destruction. But right now, all Israel can do, it seems, is target civilians. We see Tehran burning. I've had Mohammed Randi on my show tell me that a building right near him has been targeted. 20 children killed, eliminated. It's an absolutely despicable and atrocious thing that we are seeing. But this is all about desperation. This is not about nuclear weapons. This is about the United States and Israel seeing the clock ticking on their waning dominance and really their waning legitimacy, and they're trying to take Iran out. The problem with trying to take Iran out, though, is Iran's escalation dominance. They have an incredible number of missiles. They just started demonstrating their hypersonic missile capabilities. The imagery of Tel Aviv being struck with hypersonic missiles is an absolute humiliation for the Israeli regime and the United States, which now Israel is on its knees begging for the U.S. to become more directly involved in this. This is an absolutely incredible development that we are following here on this channel. Now, we have to talk about the significance not only of the military side of this, which is huge. When you have downed F-35s, when you have Israeli infrastructure being taken out, when you see that people now, Israelis, are under the rubble after 20 months plus of what they have done to Gaza. Now you have actually Israeli officials talking about, we are Gaza now. Well, you are the ones who instigated this. Gaza is it was the igniting flame to what we see now. This need for Israel to, with the United States' help, expand as much as it can. Now it is paying the price of its absolutely vicious and expansionist agenda. So a big part of this now, Operation True Promise 3, and what we are seeing is much more than military. We are seeing Israel on its knees begging the United States because there is a big problem for Israel, and that is that the United States, on the one hand, will give Israel everything it wants, to do whatever it wants, at least everything that it can give. But now the United States, now Israel are in a very precarious situation. Now they have to consider, how far do they go with this? Does the United States meet with Israel, which I'm sure they're doing around the clock at this point, both covertly, and soon we will see a news, I'm sure, of what the results of these meetings will be, where they need to decide whether they want to come in with their bombers and their bunker busters and begin leveling Iran. It is not a guarantee. Actually, it is likely certain that Iran will maintain its capabilities over this period. And the United States has to decide whether they want the embarrassment of a downed F-35, downed F-18, downed aircraft. That is really the consideration, because when that happens, when the United States takes a direct blow, when one of their naval destroyers is sunken to the bottom of the sea, when U.S. assets in the region, in the Gulf, when those are targeted and struck, when the Strait of Hormuz is closed off, when these things begin to happen, the United States will have to consider the unthinkable. Why? Not because any of us on this channel agree with this, or at least most of us who watch this channel don't want to see this. But when we look into the mindset, the interests of the empire, of the American empire, we know that the United States empire has never been able to handle any challenger, anyone that can demonstrate, regardless of its political and economic system, any power, any country, any nation, any force that can demonstrate parity, that can demonstrate maybe a dual power in comparison.
When you look at Vietnam in the 60s, a little teeny town and country that they had no GDP, they had no army, they had no air force, no nothing. And they fought the United States for a good 20 years until we had to leave. They chased us out of town. Same thing with in Afghanistan. The Taliban fought them for 20 years and chased them out of town. And there's plenty of other places that show that same ilk. But the hidden hand, it has no ideology except control, power, wealth, right? That's it. That's all they're doing. And they have that on many layers, not just what we see on our tubes and our tablets and our screens. They're more interested in the power of the occult, the esoteric, dimensional. And I would say that the hidden hand, that is not just the United States, the deep state, or the European, the Nazis, or the neocons, or the neo Zionist, or whatever. Those are just chump change. And that isn't basically frigging all these people it's like fascism. No, you have to really understand what fascism is. And the premise, you should read 1984. Orwell goes into that amazingly well, right? And read, Mein Kampf. Again, Adolf Hitler didn't write that. The process of the hidden hand is not so hidden. We see it every day, right? And I call it the powers that shouldn't be, right? And then there's the hidden hand, which they're kind of upper middle management. And then there's the folks at the top, and that's the Elohim. And the Elohim is not the creator of the universe. Elohim is the demigods, right? And if you watch that movie, The Matrix, that couple who wrote it and directed it and produced it, they did their very best. I mean, they had a tight story that they were going to tell, and they did. And that's why it was so popular. But a good deal of what they were trying to get to the public was left on the cutting room floor. And the very, the first movie or it's the second movie, whatever movie Eon gets, pretty much kills the machine and ends up in the office of the architect. And the architect shows him all these screens of all the thousands of neons who have, been at the same position, right? And you can see them all. And that is how many, and in the beginnings, there have been. And that was probably their biggest tell, saying, we aren't, all our religions, all our politics, all our everything that describes our experience as what it is right now. It's not. This is the illusion. This is, the Matrix, And so they had a lot of stuff that was left on the cutting room floor because the corporate state who paid for this did not want the story. They wanted the story so people could have it in their head and be somewhat scared of it and somewhat, ready to respond in the way that the hidden hand wanted them to be, right? So I'd love it if any of you guys here. So the guy who's here from the beginning, 14 minutes and 32 seconds worth, probably is AI representing the hidden hand. And I'm happy you're here, right? Because I'm not against you, I'm not against any of this. I'm not against Mega or Donald because it's scripted. It's there. It's like being in the Bible. And it's not messianic. God didn't put Donnie there to be, the next Christ. Donnie is a game show host. And if you don't realize this is all a game show, you're hurting, right? So my car, it's, right there in the middle of the road, at probably best place for it. Um, and it's at the end of no, even if I can't go anywhere, it's not the end of times. And that's going to be what it is. So what can I say except let's look at some more stuff, right? So, and I'd love to respond. So there's two of you now, and so as I said, I've been talking about the big splat. That's what I call it, the big splat, right? For at least 8 years. Go back and look at my
in comparison to it. No, it cannot tolerate this, and there's no bigger embarrassment or humiliation for the United States than to see its supposedly exceptional and undefeated military, which is, of course, untrue. The United States military has been defeated over and over and over again. Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, we can go on and on and on. But should Iran, which would be seen if Iran's projectiles and ballistic missiles, etc., down a naval destroyer of the United States, it would then be seen
aircraft
as a pure power. And of course,
6,000 men dead, $1 trillion of hardware
to
gone.
Ignite a possible nuclear strike on Iran and to essentially put the world into the biggest global calamity, maybe in the history of geopolitical and political and economic development.
What did he say? Israel hitting.
That's really what's at stake
Iran
here.
with a nuclear weapon.
This is why
that's legitimizing hitting who's left in the Gaza Strip with a nuclear weapon. Thus hitting the Houthis with a nuclear weapon. Thus hitting Lebanon with a nuclear weapon.
Because this is no longer schoolyard games. This is not, oh, Donald Trump, we're going to knock everyone out. We're going to punch everyone in the face and everyone is going to bow. Iran has shown that it is not going to bow. Iran won't bow to the United States. It won't bow to Israel. It won't bow to the combined West.
You have to realize it's not Israel pulling America's chain.
Since 1979,
it's America pulling Israel's chain. I don't care if it gets quite close. They just want to do what they want them to do.
Against the wall. So Operation True Promise 3, of course, is much more than the missiles, than the explosions that are sending a cathartic effect across the world. We see.
Is it true that eating eggs can cause type 2?
Ooh.
Yes. And very few people have the courage to talk about it.
Oh, I need courage for that.
We see how people in Lebanon, people in Yemen, people in the West Bank, people all across the region are celebrating this because Israel is the most hated country in the world, and the United States is fast becoming one of the most hated countries in the world, if it already is, because of its undying support for this regime, which has committed genocide, which has attempted to destabilize the region, and has expansionist ambitions that put the world at complete risk. We are seeing the consequences of all of this, folks. This is a historic moment in geopolitics, in world development, in the political and economic history of humanity in a big sense, because we have to remember the arc of history here. The United States, Israel, they have been down this road before, but never have they been challenged in this way. They have seen resistance their entire reign. Their entire reign, they have seen resistance. But even when they've lost, they have maintained this veneer of superiority. Even after they lost to Vietnam, they could claim they killed millions of people. Even after they lost to Korea, they can claim they were able to split and partition it and, of course, turn South Korea into a vassal state. Even when they lost Afghanistan, they could claim that the entire region, while not under their dominion, was, of course, destabilized to the point where at least the U.S. has a major presence in the region militarily. Not so much economically, but, of course, economics is influenced by the military front. So, after the Soviet Union fell in 1990, the United States was able to maintain this image of superiority by essentially waging wars of destruction all over the world, of regime change. So now we are seeing Israel put the United States and itself in the position that is completely desperate. And the developments here are stunning. So when we look at what's happening in Tel Aviv for
So that guy described it far better than I could. But you have to, none of these guys take it to the mat. None of them say this is all scripted, meaning none of this would happen. The failure of America and Israel's foreign policy and political and military and financial strength, right? It's been scripted to do so. America needs to leave the stage. Another character is going to show, right? And it may be still what I'm thinking it's going to be is very similar to what happened in George Orwell's 1984, in that um, you're going to see, a great economic, social, and military disruption. What we're watching right in front of us, right? And Donnie has this big military parade, very a la Russia, a la North Korea. The oligarch saying, "I'm such a bully, don't mess with me." And Donnie's speech was about that. But look how many people showed up in D.C. Wearing their MAGA hats. No one. I mean, probably, if the honest number is told, maybe 10, 20, maybe 30,000 people showed, if, right? Whereas all across America, it was the mobilization of We Don't Have a King Day. And, even in LA, where the Army and the Marines are, they had, close to 100,000 people in the street. Now, 99% were being very peaceful. And the people who were making noise are hired, I say hired, provocateurs to give the excuse for the military going kill a lot of people, right? Because by posse comitatus, the military, the National Guard, but the Marines aren't the National Guard. They are the tip of the spear, the nastiest, hardest fighting. Both the National Guard and the Marines have their heavy weapons on them, and they may not have a round in the chamber, but they all have clips on their body. All they had to do is snap it in there and start shooting, right? And they're shooting rubber bullets, and people are getting really hurt because the rubber bullet is designed to disperse the crowd by shooting it at the ground. It kind of breaks apart and splatters on to the dissenters, right? And it's little bits. It's like if a car was driving by and then turned real hard, and all the loose gravel kind of spattered on you. But this is at a higher velocity. If that stuff hits you, you are going to have a little cut. Gets it in your eye, you might get blind. Not going to kill you. But these guys are shooting rubber bullets at people. So it's yeah, it's a rubber bullet, but the velocity of it is, gets cut when you hit it at the ground, and then it explodes in front of their face, right? So anyway, all of this is scripted, and Donnie is, again, the game show host. You see the imagery of all the people, the secretary of this, the secretary of that, who had to go to the show. Basically, they look bored out of their gourds, right? And what's truly interesting, close to 90% of the Republican Senate did not go to this. Right? So if the Senate okays the big, beautiful bill, I mean, there's 11,000 pages in that. Now, I've looked at a lot of them, and there's a lot of stuff in there. It's like they call it Christmas ornaments, meaning there are all these hidden and hanging little goodies for people and senators and congressmen. But the bottom line is this bill will make it a law that the president doesn't have to listen to the court, one of the three arms of power, right? Doesn't have to listen to the Congress. So, and the other thing is, it also legalizes and influences and mandates that if things go into uprising state, that we have martial law. We're already kind of there, right? That the fact that in California that the National Guard and Marines are there and they weren't needed. You can see that they weren't needed because the only people who are really doing anything are the hired provocateurs, and those people aren't representing the people; they're representing the corporations. You have to realize that the United States, we have since the founding fathers, we have been an oligarchic. We're not a democracy; we're a republic, and that republic represents not the people in that document is the rich guys. That's the we the people. So that's what it's always been. Has always, and if Americans get crumbs, and if you watch the film Gangs of New York, it tells it beautifully. And if you watch the movie um, called Zardos, um, you know, you will see where we're heading, and kind of already are. Where are you now? Where am I now? I'm at a friend's place, right? But I'm incommunicado, and pretty much my ride is not riding. So I'm you know out in the woods is where I live, and that's where I'm at, right? Um, so Squirrely Notions, where are you now? And what are you thinking? That's what do you want to see happen, Squirrely? You know? And hey, there's two of you there. How about some thumbs up? Let's see some thumbs up. Let's see some subscriptions. Let's see that. Be nice. Get a hold of me if you want to talk to me in semi persona. Get me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail. Tell other people about Dreamy Dreamland. Yeah. So, hey, Jamie. Let's see. It's CJ, love bro, in the woods too. CJ. Who's CJ? Christ Jesus? Is that it here there? Anyway, so again, what do you guys think of what's going on? Let's see. I'm gonna try and call some people. So, let's see. Martin's son. Oh. Okay, good. Okay, squirrely. Okay, okay. So I'm out in the middle of the woods, and my car's stuck. I don't know if it's broken. It's stuck though, and that's what it is. Okay, let's see. Do 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 do. So, Squirrely, what do you think about? So I know this kid. I took him up to the school and showed him how to meditate. Squirrely, tell the folk your experience when you went up to the school. Tell them your story. Also, tell them why is Roanoke always stuck in it, I was there forever. What's starter? What's that? What state are you in? I'm in a state of consciousness. So I'm not too far from you. I'm within a 500-mile radius of Roanoke. So I'm not that far. If I could trust my car, I'd probably come visit you. Because I want to come back to Roanoke because Roanoke is stuck and has always been stuck. I lived there 20 years, Your father is a good example. Your father, Martin, could have been mayor. We were in this meeting of all the usual suspects, and we went around a circle, and it was just after, I think, Occupy kind of fizzled out, and I was sitting next to Martin, and the usual suspects. I got there before anybody, and I was sitting in the meeting room, which is a big an auditorium classroom kind. You could fit about 100 people in there, and I was sitting in the dark, because I was in way worse shape than I am now. Even though I had heart surgery 3 weeks ago. I'm going to have hip surgery in a month from now. I had serious eye surgery about a year ago. Uh, and it's all kind of working. And at my age, I'm pushing 80, you don't get surgery unless it's going to make your life better, not keep you alive. I couldn't care. I'd drop over dead right here, right now. Would be fine. It'd be great. It'd be like being on, my last going out. I'd be saying, remember, keep hope alive. And love from the mountains, yeah. So Jamie lives in Tipperary, one of the most amazing places on the face of the earth. Jamie, what is that road that kind of goes over the mountains from the middle? You pass Skibbereen, you pass going towards Galway on the West Coast Road, and there's this little teeny road that like climbs up the mountain and goes over. And at top, it's not a town, but there's a pub up there. It says, Ireland's highest pub, and there's a post office and a general store, and that's about it. And the old crone lived within a 10-mile radius of that. So, Jamie, um, get together with the minded, awakened that's what when this thing started out, we had a pretty strong what I called the cadre, and that's what they were. And there were a number of you know what you would call um, trolls that would come in and be, well, get rid of them, drop them out, blah 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 blah. And I said, no, no, no. The trolls have to stay, and we had to. They are part of our community, so let's give them love, and we did. And that's where Dragon came from. A lot of them were, and the real trolley trolls couldn't get a negative vibe out of us. Right? We just were loving towards them, and that's what this has always been. This conversation. Um, uh, There's James. Rubus. She'll find me. Yes, yes. The old crone will find you. No doubt about that. Because you live in her neighborhood. You know? But what is that road? Do you know the road I'm talking about? Really teeny road that it's like a 1-lane road. And every like 5 miles, I have a place where you can like jog in so somebody can pass you coming the other way, right? And so basically how it runs is that, especially when it's like there's this place where it comes off the West Side Highway and goes all the way up, 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 really steep road, and it does this, and they probably every mile they have a place you can jog in, but the person who's coming down the hill has to park, and turn the wheels into the cliff, not the cliff, into the mountain, and then the other guy has to back up that at most mile to where, but there are other little places if you can squeeze in there, a car could get by. Not a big truck though. But do you know the road I'm talking about? Anyway, so that's where the old crone lived, and that's kind of where I live, but not in Ireland, So again, let's see. Let's have some insights on how you're feeling, what you're doing, all of the rest. Let's see. Do, 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 boop, boop, beep, boo. Okay, here's Bobby. Bobby. This is what Bobby looks like. So this guy called me after seeing me on the old crone. No, he failed. Oh, we'll try it again because it shouldn't fail. We're in a place where I have really good signal.
Now remember, love is the only reality. Everything else is an illusion. No boundaries, no limits. Let the adventure begin.
So I wonder where that came from. So we used to speak relatively regularly, right? And I would sense when he was gonna, oops, have a problem, and then I call, right? And so, and I've had, he's not the only one. I've had more than 100 people in the last 5 years get a hold of me and say, "Oh, I can't take my life anymore. I'm a drug addict. I'm an alcoholic. I'm a sex fiend. I'm in a terrible relationship and I'm stuck and I can't get out. And what do I do?" And I would just talk to them and listen to them, and then say, "I hear you saying da da da. So, Squirrely, come on. You were going to tell the story of when I took you up to the school and showed you how to meditate. When I took you to that sacred spot along the path, right? And it kind of changed your life for a while. I don't know if it still has changed your life because we can go in and out of our life being changed. So, Squirrely, tell us, right? And while he's thinking about that, I'll tell you about his dad. His dad is a black man, and Squirrely's a black man, and they kind of come from Roanoke, Virginia. And Martin has been. Oh, let's see, Jamie. My wife is Irish, and says Ireland is calling her. Really? I didn't know your wife was Irish. I thought she was a home girl. So you must have gotten a new wife. Um, when the time is right, I know the road didn't do it in pink Cadillac. Hmm. Oh, that's Jamie saying yes. I didn't do it in a pink Cadillac. Yep, exactly. Um, yes, let's see. Yes, I did. I have no idea, my friend. Yeah, until you tell me, I have no idea. This is very true. Um, the well is a thing. I feel if called come, that this is what happens. In my wife and I have drawn us lots to a place, including the Great Pyramid twice. Yes, crazy, but so sane. Trust, intuition. Yes, intuition. Trust. One of my. So I've had many. I've done many things socially, consciously, artistically, business. What you name it, I've done it. So I'm at a place where I've done it, right? And so what do I do next? Next thing is that's why I am a griot to love's co-creation. And that is the closest thing to being in having a covenant with the great creator, right? And the word griot, right? People know it as the attendant to the midwife, right? Eh. But if you've ever been in that situation, and I've been a griot, the old crone. I was her griot. I attended many births with her. Well, 5 with her. And I did everything. Made the fire, made the food. Cleaned this, wiped that, took care. Did everything other than what the old crone was doing, making sure that baby was came onto this side of the veil healthy. Right. Uh, gotcha. Okay. Um, So if Kaja is from Ireland, what part of Ireland is Kaja from? Put put Kaja on the keyboard and let her talk to um, Jamie. They can get Irish together, and that would be fun. While I tell stories. We met at the radio station. We hung out all day and wished me up Benton Mountain, and we saw amazing home and crazy driveway. Yes, I always seem to be living on the end of a crazy driveway. Um, Intuitive impulse came often and colored by ego and trying it. Wait out the signs in a way. Ask you. Yes. Okay. So I would say that is you, right? So unless you're AI and you've listened to every story I've ever told, and I'm sure I've told a number of stories about my driveway. And it wasn't only the drive, but the county roads were insane. There's this forgot what the name of it is, but it was one of this road that was like did this, and it was a cliff on one side and a mountain on the other side. And so we had these ice storms in Virginia, and they had no guardrail on this thing, and I don't think they even have it now. But if you were to drive on that road, because the road actually tipped towards the cliff, not towards the mountain wall, which would be a lot safer to crash into that than to go up the cliff, because there were houses down below. So if you went up that cliff, there was a good odds that you would be airborne and like come straight through the roof. So whenever it was icy, I never took that road, because there were a couple of times that I was stupid enough to do it, thinking I got to go do something. And like today, I had to go do something. Well, not really. Not going to happen. Right. So anyway, so that's the story. Oh, what else? What was I talking about? Yeah, so all the shit that's going on right now is at, the best. Oh, yes, talking about being a doula. So in Greek, the word doula means slave, meaning unconditional surrender, meaning not, oh, I'm going to serve God a cheeseburger, maybe. No, it's unconditional surrender, right? 100%. And I'm still a puddinhead. I'm still a monkey boy. So I can get normally being 80% of my life, 100% in servitude to love's unconditional um, creation, right? Now that other, 18% or so is never, I don't really, because what is sin? Is sin jacking off? No. Is sin having sex with lots of people? No. Is sin stealing? No. These aren't good things. They're basically in the Ten Commandments. And what are the Ten Commandments? They basically suggestions, right? The number one suggestion in the Ten Commandments is have no false gods. And when you are in sin, you are having a false god. That's the number one big bad sin. And that isn't like having some other mojo dude in another religion, because that still is love's co-creation if you are in spirit. Like if you're a Muslim and you are 100% in spirit of Allah, Allah's not asking you to go kill things. Allah's not saying, oh, you need to have this secret police. Allah's not saying you need to, live in a state that is totally run by fear and hate of everything else other than what you think I am, because you don't know who Allah is, buddy. It's way past our pay grade, right? But love isn't. And that's the connective rod between us and the creator. Just love, not hate, not anger, not vengeance, not. So sin is when all of those things, hate, anger, all of that stuff, having false witness against your neighbor, coveting their wife, all of that, even if you did that, right? That's not sin until you basically put it in the context that I am living, my whole existence is to have sex with my neighbor's wife, to steal, lie, cheat. That's my God. Lie, steal, my God. Judgment. Now I could say a lot of people that I know, that's on television, that's them. But it's not my place to say that. Now I can make fun of the orange turd. I can make fun of little Marco. I can make fun of Pootie Putin. I can make fun of all those guys, but I'm not there to judge, right? To make fun, yes, right? I'm a cheeky monkey. I can do that. So that 18%, where I'm not really sinning, but I'm not being 110%, you know, a slave, to love's co-creation. Now, making fun, maybe half that time I am being so instead of going from 88, I'm going to 94, right? Because at 8% of making fun of all those people, that's actually in love's co-creation, right? See how this works? Hmm. Yes. Impulsive, intuitive impulse can often be clouded by ego and turning it await other signs if you ask for. See, and that's the thing. You have to ask God. God has this relationship with us, this covenant with us, and we have to ask. So here we go. Close your eyes, take a big breath. Conscious intent I am. Conscious intent I am. Conscious intent I am. Om to serve love's co-creation. I have no idea what I am doing. Love, please take the wheel. I should have said that with my car. Take the wheel. Help me get out of this. Here comes the rain. The blue sky is over on the edge, so this rain will just be a little shower. Anyway, so where are we at? 5 folk are here. Let's hear from you guys. There's 2 thumbs up. Let's have 5 thumbs up. You can do that. I know you can. If you're not subscribed, come on, subscribe. And you want to talk to me, like JC, get a hold of me at the dude awake 42 at Gmail, right? And then we can really talk, right? And I'll give you my new phone number when I get you on the email, right? So the radio station, is that Captain Zero's radio station? Hey, Mute, I keep forgetting to email Bob. Yep. So one day you will. you know. Anyway, so it's raining, and it might rain hard. The windows are closed. Yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a gully washer. But it's blue sky all around me, so it's just a black cloud over me, which is a good sign. The Native Americans, I hated that, the indigenous folk, right? Everywhere says when it rains, it's a sign that God loves you. Jumped in the river. I lived in Brazil for a number of years, on and off, and I was building a nightclub in a place called Buzios, which is on the Atlantic coast, about 200 miles north of Rio. And it's this little town that was started. It was a fishing town to start, and it had you went up the hill from the sea, and there was really good farmland. So it was a good farm and good fishing, and the people lived well there. And then between World War I and World War II, the Nazis kind of found the place and found it advantageous. And so they came and built a hospital there and a research center because they found that there is a property of people all around known as the happy folk. And these are indigenous folk, right? Who really don't appreciate or know of or live for stuff, they aren't materialists. They aren't mercantilist. They don't have a job. They pretty much just have a really good time with life. Pick berries, have kids, play with the kids, and that circle does. That's a circle of life, right? And that's why Earth is still the Garden of Eden, because there are always people, the happy folk, that are around. Now, in what the Europeans call North America and South America, Central America, before Christopher Columbus, all of those people were happy folk. Now they had bad days, they were, grumpy sometimes, et cetera, right? They had old men up there, get off my lawn. They did have that, but overall, they were the happy folk, right? And so that is our job, to be the happy folk. And one of the real hard edge ways of being happy folk is being a doula to love's co-creation. Now you can do it, as a team, have a community, and that usually sometimes they call it church. But I haven't found one church that represented that. Now I've been through lots of churches. I mean, I was sent to a seminary to be a Catholic priest. I was going to be the rocket scientist for the Pope, and I just was too concerned with the well-being of the poor. And the hierarchy just said, no, we're giving you this unbelievable education not to help poor people, no, to make us money. That's what. And then when they realized that's not going to happen, I got, they first the Jesuits tried to kill me, but I seemed to always just a couple of weeks. I had this heart surgery and it went perfect, and in the recovery room, those people were just spot on. And then I was going to spend the night just to make sure that everything was right. And they'd let me go around noon. And so they didn't have a room for me. So they put me in the hallway and left me there. And I kind of nodded out. And then I was woken up by alarms from the machines that were keeping an eye on me. And all those things are supposed to be Bluetooth into the big screen. And no one came until someone got annoyed by the alarms, and they just turned the alarms off. But my blood pressure had gone from 124/60 to 210/170. I mean, and it was still going up, and they left me there for almost 6 hours until 5 a.m., maybe longer. Around 5 a.m. when I was totally delirious, and people come, "Oh, you repumped." You'd think, and all the, if you look at the screen, it said, "He's dead. He's dead. He's dead." But at 5 a.m., the head nurse of the heart hospital, not just this lady who really knows, she runs the operating room, she runs the recovery room, she runs the heart ICU. She came by to get her palm read, and she, oh my God, and she hit the little alarm button on her phone. And, within a minute, I was in the ICU, and they put me on a machine. It's not, a machine that they, artificial kidney. It's another machine that's kind of older that the artificial kidney was devised by, that takes all of your blood and takes everything out of it. So if you're ever in OD, other than getting Narcan, they also do this to flush whatever that shouldn't be there out of you. And what happened was, when they put me in the hallway, I nodded out, and then somebody came by and put the wrong IV bag, meaning the drugs are in the IV bag. And so they gave me somebody else's IV bag, and those things were killing me. Not the operation, not like bleeding out, and in a way, that was good, because if it had been anything other, I probably would have been dead. But just the slow death of getting the wrong drugs, and my cardiologist said, well, this was a really good stress test of your heart, and it came out flying colors. And the other side of it was, they were so that they oh, we're so sorry, we're bad, oh, we're so, oh. And the bottom line, I came out of there 2 days later, and I had the platinum card. meaning they said, we'll take care of you no matter what. So if, all the meaningless, nothing kind of stuff that our government, Medicaid, Medicare, SSI, all of that stuff goes away, because if they pass the big beautiful bill, that's what's going to happen. And it's not like those entities will go away; they just get defunded. It's just like when Neon Husk and Douche went into into the FAA and into the FCC and public broadcasting and the international aid and the IRS and everybody who they went in. All they did was scrape all the data, and Elon took that back to his brand new AI data center in Tennessee, and starts with an M. Anyway, he bought out an Electrolux office factory that had about 1,000 acres and had about a 500,000 square feet under roof, and air conditioned and water and electric and everything. And and the county and city said, "Oh yeah, we'll sell it to you for $1. You'll bring jobs to what's the name of it? Starts with M. In Tennessee, starts with an M." And I was telling my wife about your salons in New York, you being an electrician and meeting Basquiat. Yeah, more than meeting Basquiat, I picked Basquiat off the street. He was in his little prep school uniform, and he was turning tricks up in the South Bronx. I was up there working for the Chinese, electrician, real estate guy. And I don't know why, but the blacks and the Chinese don't get along. Chinese and Hispanic, like brothers. Right? Anyway, so I used to drive the unmarked truck up to the real estate parts of South Bronx and Harlem and fix their stuff. And I was coming down, I was on crossing Martin Luther King Boulevard, and there's this little kid, right? They're all the girls and trannies, and there's this kid in a uniform. And I stop by and say, "Kid, get in." And he gets in. He goes, $10 for blowjob, 15 to fuck me in the ass. And I said, whoa. What are you doing here? And that was Basquiat. Oh, and then I said, "Are you hungry?" "Oh, I'm starving." And I said, "Good, I'm going to take you downtown." And I took him to Vilsakas, which is an amazing Ukrainian restaurant. And if you are hungry and you want to eat stuff that'll make you feel unbelievable, like you hadn't eaten in 3 days, Ukrainian food's the stuff to eat. Anyway, they had great bread and everything, blintzes. I took him there, and he told me his whole story. And he came from Santo Domingo, and his mother was a prostitute, and he was a little baby, an infant. He was a toddler, and she was out there selling trinkets and turning tricks. And these rich people came by, and you have to realize Santo Domingo is half of what Haiti is. Haiti is where all the poor, suffering people. San Domingo is where all the rich white people are, right? It's the same island. It's just got a little line there. And so it used to be Hispaniola when, good old Chris came. And he, the Indians took care of him. And he went back to Spain with a few of them, showed the Queen, said, "This place has all kinds of great stuff, sugar, tobacco, and here, try smoking this." Anyway, this is going to be great for Spain. And so, and look at these guys. They're tall, they're handsome, they're smart. They already learned Spanish just coming over on the boat. And we'll have slaves. And they're not black, They're kind of black, but not really black, So anyway, he went back with his son 2 years later, 2,500, what do you call shock troops, who kill anything, anytime, anywhere, and cannon and muskets and swords and horses, and conquered the 6 million beautiful, happy people in Hispaniola and put them in slave and cut most of the land down and grew, sugar, tobacco, and other things that were, viable commodities. And within 6 years, they killed 6 million people through disease and just killing them. And so they went right across the pond into Africa, which is really a shorter distance than going to Spain, and grabbed a bunch of black people, and the rest is history, right? And so they were doing great. This was Spain's greatest military base, right in the middle of all the action. They had the greatest ships, and they were. That's why they had the Spanish Empire, right? But instead of building an empire, they were just looking for gold. They went from place to place to place and left priests there to turn it into a city or a town or whatever. And so that's Haiti, Hispaniola. And so somewhere around the 1790s, they had a revolution and they won. So the basic native, the African / indigenous folk won. And the white people ran up into the hills and built defensive things. And the basic, Haitians, that's what they would call themselves, they had the port, they had this, they had the money, they won, right? And so the white folk went up to and started Dominican Republic. And from that, Haiti, they never were reconquered, except they would, the rich, Europeans and Dominicans would basically influence what was going on there. And sometimes it was going on great for the Haitian people, and sometimes, like now, not so much. And all those gangs are just an extension of the secret warriors, right? The CIA, the NSA, the MI5, the MI6, the KGB, whatever name you want. Gangs are just hired guns to put down the people, right? So they don't have to, move in the army or whatever, right? So it's a cheap way of doing it. And so they just want Haiti to be in total conflict, in chaos, right? And so that's why, one of the biggest things that Donald Trump did, I mean, he really didn't do much to America, but Oliver North went and, that's what Iran-Contra was all about. Not just, Iran or the Contras, but all of Central and South America. All these gangs, that are in Honduras. Honduras was doing great, had all this oil. It was, well-educated, well-oiled machine. And once they wanted to, it was fine for them to run their country because they were European. But when they did want to get paid for their oil in American dollars, that's when, the socialists came in. And the socialists and communists are basically fellow travelers of the corporate structure, right? I was telling my wife about, So back to Basquiat. So I'm driving down, and there's this kid, right? And he tells me this story that he was like this little infant, and he was in Haiti, and these people had been, in Santa, in the white country above them, and they took a day trip. And they just kind of was, buying this little trinket, that little trinket, having a nice cocktail, spent the night in a nice white people hotel. And they were walking through this part of town earliest in the morning, not when the whole crowd was there. And they found this lady, and she was selling trinkets. And also, hey, do you want a blowjob? Does your wife want to watch? And so, or you want to, have my son jack you off, or whatever you want. And so these people were so enamored with the little boy that they took him back to Westchester. They just kind of took him, went to some lawyer up there in Santo Domingo and got some, phony papers saying that he was adopted, and they took him with them. And they took him back to Westchester and basically treated him like a pet. But as he grew older and older and older, he's a human being. And so he was, went to private schools, and he was whitish, but still had a nice tan. And basically knew a lot of language. He was a smart guy. And so once he started hitting around teenagers, 14, 15, his hormones were popping, and he realized he wasn't quite the average guy. And he was no longer the fun little pet that they had. He was, oops, something's wrong here. So anyway, what time is it? Oh, it's almost 4 o'clock. Okay, kids, talk amongst yourselves, right? I'm going to make a phone call. So let's see where I thought the folks would come by now. So, do. I'll be back. I needed to walk anyway. Okay, and I'm back. Did anyone? Oh boy, a bunch of people left. So anyway, Pasqua, yes. So picked him up, took him to Valseca's. We had dinner. I said, listen, what I need is a helper. He goes, helper? I said, yeah, I have a nice loft, and you can stay there, and you don't have to turn any tricks, and I'll pay you, right? I'll give you money to just hand me screwdrivers and just be my helper. You don't have to do any hard lifting. He said, wow. And he had never felt any of that kind of compassion, empathy, or generosity, right? And that is the thing you need to do. Like, uh, Good Samaritan, I was being more, I was being that, but I was doing it in, reference to serving love's co-creation. That's what I do. I do kind of events, things, that kind of stuff. And so anyway, I, said, yeah. So we had a meal, and I said, actually, I need to go someplace, and I'll show you exactly what kind of work you've been doing. So there was a little place I was working on for another real estate guy in Chinatown, and basically it was a little teeny building on East Broadway, where East Broadway starts, like right between the Manhattan Bridge and the Brooklyn Bridge, and there's this beautiful little, they call it Little Israel, and this little um, town square almost, where one road, East Broadway, runs into this, I think, J Street or Pearl Street, that goes all the way down to the Battery. Anyway, so it's a very open area, and there was this little teeny building, and maybe 4 stories high. Each floor was about 1,000 square feet. It had been more or less a warehouse, and so and pretty old, like from the 1870s maybe. But this was still that then, and that was still a commercial area where boats would leave stuff off, because the East River was just right there. But but they had filled it in a lot, and so instead of being right there, it's like Canal Street. Canal is they call it Canal because it's a canal under the road, right? If you go down to either the Hudson River or the East River and kind of get down there, you can see it's this gigantic canal, and they didn't like plug it up or stop it. They just, because I'm sure they tried and it just kept, so they built a bridge that was a street, right? Anyway, so that was the neck of the woods that this little place was in. And so I had the key. We went in there, and basically it had already been demoed out. A lot of the roughing was in, and I had another helper that had, I like went around with a magic marker, and basically he drilled all the holes, right? And then he was on that level of being a helper. So I had other jobs that, and also he was pretty good at demoing things out. I would turn everything off and I would spray paint things orange. I said, that goes, anything that's not sprayed paint, do not rip out. So anyway, we had many, many coils of BX, right? And I said, this is BX and this is how it works. And this is how, don't do this and it'll come off the coil not quite nicely. If you do that, it'll, bend it and it'll be a problem. So just all you have to do is like move that coil here and feed it through, and I'll pull it, right? And then we'll do another coil. You pick it up and you put it there, and I will uncoil it and you will pull it, right? And that he was much better at pulling than uncoiling, because he kept screwing up the uncoiling with the first coil, right? I said, no, you do it this way. See, you do it this way. And he, and I was keeping, no, stop. I said, whenever I say stop, just stop whatever you're doing. No question, just stop, right? Because you're either going to hurt yourself or you're going to screw something up. So if I just say stop, and you're not going to get punished, just stop. And so he's good at that. And so, he was, we did that day, and we pretty much pulled all the cable, and then we started nailing on boxes, and then we went to Chinatown for dinner, right? And he loved that. And I had a loft that was, actually, I didn't have a loft. My boss's daughter, who is just a goddess, she picked me out of the line to be her boyfriend because it would annoy her father the most. She went to, I forgot, the art school in New York City. I forgot the name of it. It'll pop in my mind. But anyway, she was there, and she would walk across the bridge. She loved living in that place because she just had to walk one block and get on the Manhattan Bridge and walk across, and no, the Brooklyn Bridge. She walked 2 blocks down and basically got on the Brooklyn Bridge and walked to where her school was. So anyway, I drove the truck there, and there was this nice little alley that I had the key for the gate, and I could just back that truck up into that alley because that was my boss's truck, and I was putting in his alley. And so anyway, and this was the unmarked truck. So no one ever rode it. So that was my vehicle. And that was part of our thing. I said, if you need it, tell me, I won't take it. Otherwise, I'll do errands for my own self. And he really needed me. So, pretty much. And, that I was dating his daughter. Normally he would like lose his shit, but he would say, maybe you'll straighten her out. So, anyway, Basquiat and I went there, and there she was, this goddess. And she goes, oh, he's so cute. And she just loved him like a puppy, but with total love and empathy. And we got to get this kid some clothes. And he wasn't a kid, he was an adolescent. And so we did. We got him dressed up and into work clothes. Because he was sticking out like a thumb wearing and the patches that ID'd who he was were ripped out. So anyway, that's Basquiat. That's how I met him. And then he basically was my helper. And he was just fair because within a couple of weeks of us working, him and I had different helpers, and I would, different people who were beyond a helper, getting close to being a mechanic. I would send, they were doing a job and I'd send best guy with them, and that no one could stand this guy because he had, he was on another planet, another world. He was seeing things in a different way, which I kind of understood because I see things in different ways. So anyway, about I don't know, week 2 or 3. Um, so I worked for all these different real estate guys, turning all different kinds of pieces of real estate into lofts. And this is in the 70s, and the Village Voice, New York Times, everyone had, Soho had become really expensive. And I kept, I had this guy who was, ran most of the factory buildings in Worcester Street on Spring. And he basically was supposed to be the super, but he was running his own shtick in the basement. And I came and fixed something. He said, "Listen, kid, let me show you something." He takes me up to this loft that was 7,000 square feet, had 12 by 12 foot skylights, and was top of the floor. Had one side had a window view of the Hudson, and the other side had a window view of the East River / Brooklyn Bridge, Manhattan Bridge, and the Statue of Liberty. Amazing view, but it had DC in the building, right? And so people just they had light bulbs there, and a lot of the floors didn't even have, no one messed with DC. But DC was still there. DC is still in New York because a lot of New York still runs on DC. So they might have changed it since, but this is the 1970s. So anyway, I had that loft. It was amazing, 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 amazing loft. And I kind of cleared it out, cleaned it up. And then when Soho was getting to be, really popular, and I was traveling a lot, and so I was never there, I said, I did this one job. I had about 20 grand in my pocket. I said, you know what I'm going to do? And materials, building materials would go up and down depending on what was going on, supply and demand. So I know a lot of, like, there was this company in Queens that they had a lot of warehouses, and I, kind of kept them lit and working, kind of. And so their whole thing was sheetrock and steel studs, right? And steel fire core doors, right? So I said, "Listen, buddies, I need for you," and they had these trucks that had booms. I could just pick a whole pallet of, 10 foot, 12 foot, 8 foot by 4 foot sheetrock up and slide it through a window, right? Take the window out, just slide it in. So you didn't have to like carry it up steps or any of that. And that was their shtick. And they really did a great job. They were artisans at that. So I said, I need X amount of steel studs and sheetrock up here, and you want me to wire this building. You want me to bring a service in that building. I'll do the service, and I'll do the main and sub panels, and then we'll negotiate everything else. And they said, deal, right? Because to them that was nothing, right? And they had trucks going in that neighborhood, so they would stack a couple of more tons of sheetrock and steel studs, and I didn't need a lot, So one truck, took one window out, and I had a pallet jack that was designed to move sheetrock. And basically, they had these little L's or really triangles, and so you would, take the thing would lift it and stick it on the pallet jack, and we're in pallets, a sheetrock jack, and it would move it to where you wanted it, and then you lower it on these triangle L's that would hold it, like on a, not straight up, but a little this, so you could take those sheets off really easy, right? So they gave me a bunch of those little L's and a sheetrock pallet jack, and I located the sheetrock in all the different places I needed exactly. And it took about 4 days to deliver all the sheetrock and steel studs and metal core doors. And then I had buddies who were carpenters and masons and plumbers. And we basically, so there was a septic line at both ends of the built at that loft, and actually there were four of them, right? And what they weren't septic lines, but they went into the sewer. They were 6-inch lines to take the water off the roof. Because when it rained really hard, it was like a waterfall, right? So they had, gutters, and they had, because they didn't want the water to fly off the roof in sheets and, be a waterfall into the street. They wanted it to go nicely into the sewer and go on its way. So anyway, we had, we cut that cast iron, we put a T there, and we kind of cut it into the floor, and we ran lines on either side where the kitchen and bathrooms would be. And so I made walls. I made a hallway where luckily the stairs were like right in the middle, and there was an elevator too. So there was an elevator, and I made like a little vestibule and then a hall all the way to the other side of the building where there was another fire escape. Right. So actually, it was kind of legal and fire kind of, to have like a residence, because it had power. And so what I did was I brought up um, a large riser and put a trough, and then I had these digital meters, which basically ran a sub feed to each of these lofts, and had a panel. And you came in the door. There was a switch. There was two outlets, one underneath the switch, one on the other side of around the corner, and there was a box with an outlet there, and there was two lights, a switch and two lights up in the ceiling, right? And so you walk in the door, you could turn on the lights, and you had two outlets to, if you wanted to build, to do whatever you wanted to do, right? And you had a 200 amp single phase 220 panel, right? And anyway, so that got me into the real estate business, because what I did was I fixed it up. Basically, the ceilings had that. Oh, it's like 1920s metal ceiling. I forget what to call it, and they print them out in patterns. And this one was rusting out here and there, but all I had to do is take aluminum foil, glue it over that, push it down, and then spray paint the ceiling silver, right? Silver ceiling. And what I also did was I ran a number of conduits up above that ceiling where the place was most rusted out. I could, just put EMT up there and screw it to the ceiling joist, and then put a box. And so I had like 5 or 6 boxes. So I could come out and, so I wouldn't have to rip anything up after what. So what I did was I fixed the ceiling, put two, light bulbs in two of those boxes, and basically did that. And the sheetrock walls, we sheetrocked, and we put plumbing in the walls where the kitchen and bathrooms would go, and we had drains, and so there were like little pipes sticking out of the wall with a valve on it, and over where the main water line was, there was that, and we also had gas. No, I kept it all electric, and because this building had radiators, so anyway, because they had sprinklers, so the sprinklers wouldn't freeze, they had to have radiators. So anyway, we did that, sheetrocked the walls, taped them up, painted them this nice Navajo white color, sanded the floors, and made them look like a bowling alley. So you open that door, and it was this glistening, amazing, um, you know, hardwood floor. Walls were straight and flat, and this nice Navajo white. This silvery ceiling with 3 gigantic skylights in it, and a whole wall of windows facing Worcester Street. And the other side of the hallway, there was a whole wall of windows facing this big alley. So there was sunlight coming into both apartments. So I got 14 apartments out of each of these, each about 900 square feet. And now I couldn't sell it as property, but what I could do was, because before I did this, I got a long term, um, you know, lease on that floor. I lived there 2 years and come and go and come and go. And there were a number of times where you know, the guy who was supposed to be Benny, the guy who was supposed to be the super of these buildings, said, you should go see Mr. Sylvan Lauren and get a lease for that property, because right now it's still what it is. But soon, after that article in New York Times, lawyers and doctors have been sniffing around here. So I did right away. I mean, virtually that day. I went, you know, and I had known him. I had done some work for him. And so I said, listen, this is what I'm going to do. And what I want from you is a 10-year lease, right? I'll pay you $1,000 a floor, which is like ridiculous. Most people are getting a floor like that for $300, right? Not like that. This is amazing, but not like skylights, but like most people were paying, like, let's say $300 for a 2,500 square foot loft. That was about the going price in Soho. Right? No one had gone down to Tribeca yet. So I said to the guy, and what I want to do, this is what I want to do. I want to fix it all up and really make it fancy schmancy, and but have it totally clean. Have nothing except the walls, sanded floor, silver thing, water, electric, septic in the space, right? So they can do whatever they want, and a really strong door that you can't break through. And so I said, I want to rent that floor for 1,000, right? And give me 5 months of no rent, right? But the rest of the 9 years and 7 months, I'll pay $1,000. And he goes, okay. So this is what will happen. We will that, and then I'm sure you're getting people asking about, are lost in Soho? You will say, yes, I have some for rent. And so you will bring them to this place that will be like unbelievable, amazingly sunny, and the bowling alley floors, and and he goes, okay, you won me. So I did. And so what it was this. Did all that, took me less than 5 months. Basically, I got 3 or 4 of these. I put up the walls like within 2 weeks, because I had my buddies who did steel, stud, and sheetrock, and did that, bing, bang, boom. And everywhere I had a contractor, like the sheetrock guy, right? He gave me a good deal, better deal than anybody could get. But Mr. Real Estate would pay the bill, right? Same thing with the materials. Yes, the company there, we made the steel, but they said, okay, there's a delivery fee of, every time we show up, we want $1,000, in basically cash. And Mr. Real Estate was fine with that, right? And so all of this was working out great. And basically, within 5 months, we had all of those lofts rented out. And we had all of those people coming in. And what we got, so they were going to pay each of those lofts, those 14 lofts, right? Each of them were going to pay $1,000 rent, because their little apartment in West Village was costing them $800, right? And they're going to get 900 square, like something 20 times bigger than their little apartment, and it's going to be a loft, and it's unbelievable. I'm going to be like living amongst the artists, And Joni Mitchell just lived across the street. So anyway, that was fine, right? They didn't even blink at that. But to get that loft, because there are plenty of other people want this, we sold the first time through, the first 14. We sold the key to get into that door for $24,000, right? And the real estate guy got, we didn't quite split it, but we were both happy. And so, bingo bango, 14 of these things get basically in 2 weeks. He put a ad in the Village Voice and an ad in New York Times, and within 2 weeks they were all sold. And these people were happy as clam, right? And then the guy said, "Let's do that to the rest of the building," because he still owned a building. He's making $13,000 or $14,000 a floor plus the cut. Right now, part of that contract of the key was that I would be the contractor for the loft, but I built Naho So. I built the Odeon. I built a good portion of. I lit 20 different wild, crazy clubs in New York. I had quite the pedigree, and I was a local three guy. I had my license. I could do whatever they wanted, and they wouldn't even have to think about it. Right? I had architects. I had a buddy who was an architect. He drew great pictures. I had a girlfriend who was an architect. Right? So it was all good, and so nobody wants to hear this story anymore. You're all gone. Yep, William Dafoe played me in the movie. That's where this is going. So anyway, this was right about all this is all going on when I meet, good old Basquiat. And so, he wasn't part of that because that had to be perfect. That had to be nice. That had to be, so what we would also do. So then that guy goes, "Why don't we do the next floor?" Right? And I say, "Fine." And so we're going into the contract with this, with all these people to fix their loft. So they're all talking to the architects what they want, how they want it, blah, 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 blah. So no problem. So we go down to the next floor, and that has to be demoed out. I'm not living there, but it's just chock full of stuff. And this is one loft that we went into that had been a garment thing. So they had these, sewing machine tables, right, from the 19th century, and they were made out of butcher block. It was unfreaking believable. So the people upstairs, they wanted their kitchen because they were kind of low. The kitchen and the bathroom had to be in that corner, right? They could have little drains and little waters wherever they wanted, but still it'd be way expensive for them to do that. Just let us build let's build your nice bathroom with a nice closet and a bedroom that's, and then you kind of walk in there and then it's your bathroom, and then you walk in, there's your closet, or there's your closet, then it's your bathroom. And they love that, right? That was part of the aesthetic. They all kind of had that. And then in that L that made, you'd put the kitchen, and then you'd have the big island, right? So I find all these butcher block sewing machines, and I have a friend of mine who's a really great cabinet maker, furniture maker, etc. So he said, "Stop up there," and he start milling this wood into all kinds of things, right? And so every kitchen, the basic counter of the kitchen with the sink in it, there were two sinks. One that went in the L, right? And then the counter had a sink, and the dishwasher was in the island, and the refrigeration. I found these great refrigerators that were for restaurants, and they were under the counter, not like the big square that stands up there. They were under the counter, and they had drawers in them. So you open the drawer, and they had freezer ones and vegetable ones and everything else ones, and you could put, if you wanted it higher, you could put it like two on top of each other. So they're about 36 inches high. So if you put two on top of each other, it was like having a regular refrigerator, but much wider and zones. Anyway, I think this is where they got the zone idea. So what we would do is have, if they wanted it, we'd put them on top of each other, like in the corner, so it wouldn't mar the aesthetic, because the shelves would go into it. And this guy is knocking these amazing shelves made out of this oak wood, and there were parts of these buildings that had mahogany in them. They weren't structural, so we would rip that out, and he would mill that into shelving and doors, and because a lot of these people had these beautiful doors that we put glass in, like going from the big loft area, the living space, into the bedroom. And those things would face the building wall, so the sunlight from that would be coming in, and we made sure that the bedroom and bathroom shared one of the skylights. That's kind of how when we did the walls, we kind of laid it out how we thought it would be the most amazing and best. And if you came in and said, "Sure, do that," we were all set. And if you wanted to do something else, we were all set. So anyway, we spend a good deal of time doing that, and that's about. We already had sold the first 14. And we were now demoing out all the other lots. And the real estate guy pretty much got everyone. The old timers who had factories there. He found them another space, bought them out, whatever. So we're doing this, and this is on Worcester Street, off of Spring, right? Kind of where there was this place called Food. Again, these nice Jewish girls I met, and there was no restaurant whatsoever, except like hot dog vendors. And so I met these girls through the Jewish folk I knew. I knew a lot of Jewish folk. I still do. And so actually I went to a when I lived in Williamsburg, my rabbi, who was my landlord, he kind of said, "You need to be a rabbi. So you need to, go to a rabbi school, my rabbi school," which I did. So anyway, I knew these nice Jewish girls from Upper West Side, and they had gone to Vassar and all that shit. But they were just, reincarnated versions of their great grandma, and they could bake and cook like you could not believe. And they made bread like they were a little bit Ukrainian. And so they had great bread. And so they were just going to have a bakery. I said, no. You bake the bread to make sandwiches. And as the rich people come in, this place first is going to be like a zoo. People from Westchester and all over are going to come through Asheville, through Soho, and go, "Wow, look at that!" Because there are all these galleries, 420, which was Ivan Karp's, and Brooke Alexander and Mary Boone had all come down from uptown and started up satellite things where the artists were. And these guys, I fixed their, they bought the buildings. They were smart enough to buy the buildings. Not Brooke came a little late. Same with Mary, but Ivan bought his 420, bought the building, right? Because I had known him from, I put track lighting in his place up when track lighting became woo. I put it up in his one of his galleries uptown, and so anyway, knew Ivan Karp real well, and I knew most of the artists. Like I knew Andy Warhol really well because I was he had his factory on Union Square. Andy was a smart boy. When he came to New York and he had some money because he had worked in advertising and he had his aesthetic down, he wanted to have a place that he could do whatever he wanted and no one would bother him. And he bought that place on 16th Street, right on Union. They put a big sign saying the factory. So he understood all the zoning laws. And if he said it was a factory, that building was a factory building. So no one would bug him. The inspectors go, "Oh, that's the factory." And so he's living there. He was doing he was making his movies there. He was, but it was like 1920s electric. So he was burning up. So right on the corner of where Broadway comes down and hits Varick, or not Varick, Union Square, and Fifth Avenue is on the other side. It's where the Triangle Building is, right? And it makes a cross there. So anyway, right there where Broadway kind of makes this turn, right where the park is, right on that corner was a electric supply place, a Union supply house. And Frank Viggiani owned Vika, and he owned a chunk of this. And I don't think it was somebody, either his best friend's son or whatever, somebody like in the family, and all this stuff is in the family, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. And I worked for all these guys, but they loved me because I was totally respectful. I was totally worked for them. I dropped everything to do whatever they wanted. And, always on time, always on budget, always exactly what they wanted, or what they wanted. I said, well, if we did it this way, it'd be a little better because of this. And oh, wow, I didn't even think of that. So all of these guys were my godfathers, right? Like my best godfather was Mike Finelli. Go look up on the internet, Finelli Bar, right? And so anyway, that's kind of what it was. And um, it's a difficult thing to talk about what that time was because it's not even close. I would say if you went to Africa someplace, you might find the same kind of, just amazing energy because basically America's dead. And it died, the Vietnam War. I mean, it died with the Civil War, but then it was just, used as a bitch and fought other people's wars. And now it's just going to, it's now just a, cartoon being run by a game show host. It's starting to rain again. So anyway, that's about when Basquiat kind of, I found him, and I'm not living there. I gave up my roof and I moved in with my boss, my Chinese boss's daughter, on Canals East Broadway, right, just off of Canal, and the Manhattan Bridge was above us, right. So anyway, we're doing that, and Basquiat's coming with me every day. He's got his work clothes on, his work boots on, his goggles, his hard. I was the only guy I made hard hat, goggles, gloves, right, because he was a teenager. I did not want him hurt. And he was not that, that was picking up. He was a pretty strong guy for a little guy. And he would move the cable. He'd move this, move that. And he loved demoing out them. So he'd go with a couple of guys to demo shit out. We keep an eye on him. And so anyway, we went into one of these in this building. And it had been cut up already, right? And it was quite interesting. And one of those lots, and each of those lots were about 2,500 square feet. And I said, and it was cut up in a way that actually worked just like the other ones. So I said, why? So let's just clean the shit out. So again, we found a bunch of these oak and mahogany things, and we kind of demoed that out. And right, everything could go on the elevator. And so we take it up to the floor that we had set up as our mill, where my cabinet maker friend had everything set up, and he was making furniture. And so as we were fixing that first top floor up, we were turning them into amazing. They were all showing up in the architect section of the New York Times, right? And architects Whoopi. And so we basically we're in high confidence, I say. And so this one place we were demoing at seemed to have been a small warehouse for art supplies and very high-end, interesting stuff. So it had reams and reams and boxes and boxes and boxes of paper, of card stock, of painting stock, of paper that was, like gessoed, like canvas. And it had all this decoupage, like oil paint crayons and all kinds of other stuff. And when we broke into that place, because this place, a lot of these places we had to break into because we didn't have the keys, right? And so we broke into this place, and me and one of these demo guys and Basquiat walked through the door, and it was like he was just blown away. He was like in heaven, and he ran over and he was like running around. It was like Christmas, opening up boxes, and just couldn't believe, because I had already kind of got him into the art. I have a friend of mine who was on the board of the Art Students League. And I said, I got this kid here. He's got some real talent. And can he come up to your studio and hang out with you? And he said, sure. So he did. So Basquiat he was just amazingly talented, but he was getting a little, because I knew a lot of people like Klaus Oldenburg, I wired his place. Richard Serra, he bought a bank on Bowery that we kind of fixed up for him. And there are a lot of people of that generation we knew. And like I had a buddy of mine, Michael Savage, whose uncle was Man Ray. And so I mean I just kept stumbling into these group of people where they weren't like, oh my God, it's Man Ray. No, it's like, hey Bob, how you doing? And we call everyone Bob. Anyway, so Bob Squad is like, it's Christmas time for him. And I said, listen, you know what? I have faith in you enough to say, this is your new home. Until we have to really take this place apart and turn it into a loft. But we got, 30 other ones that we're going to do. And this one little one ain't going to make a big diff, right? So you can be here as long as you want until the economics, and then I'll find you another place, right? So anyway, he's still my helper though, because he needs a salary, right? So, and I was paying him,